Good evening and welcome. I'm blown away every time we have one of these to see how many people turn out. And believe me, tonight I was watching the weather reports and I was saying, oh, will they brave the weather? And you've amazed me. Thank you all for turning out. What we have going on tonight, and it's sort of an informal process. I've got a number of old-time, You're right. Yeah, I got a number of old-time Port Salerno folks, and I'm going to ask them to share stories of their time in Port Salerno and time here in Stuart. They'll be available for your questions. Yeah, if you hear them telling a lie, call them out on it. That's all part of the game. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm going to start by giving Winnie Thompson, who is our senior attendee at our Wednesday morning coffees and donut at the museum. Winnie's been here, and I'm not going to do this for all of you guys, by the way. You're going to have to introduce yourselves. But Winnie is been a fixture over at the museum for quite some time. And as I understand, she was here before. I think she was here before Port Salerno.
Hello, everybody. Glad you're here. Winnie Thompson. I was born in Salerno before it was Port Salerno. And I'm 96 years old. I was born in 1927 during the Depression. And we lived down by the river. We moved uptown, across the railroad track. And we lived in a two-story house that's right there by the blinker light on Commercial Street. And my first brother was born there. Then we moved to where we lived the rest of our growing up. It wasn't even named a street, it was just a dirt road through the woods at the time. But it was 6th Street or Flounder now. I'm going to start by going out to the country. And I'm going to mention a lady's name, Mrs. Merritt. I'll talk about her a little later. And Hardwick's had a sawmill out there. And I met Betty Hardwick suing by that. She and I've been friends for all these years. I come on in. There was no hospital out there. It was just woods. That's why we called it country. When we walked out there, it was country. I'm talking through the years during World War II. When I grew up. So, that was a long time ago. But anyway, there was no Hibiscus Park. We'd come on in and Mr. Tony Engelbretson had an airplane and a landing strip and a hangar out there by US 1. I thought that was kind of strange. We come across US 1 and Mr. Smith had a filling station over there and he liked rattlesnakes. People caught them and brought them to him and he milked those things and got the venom out of them and sold them to someone. But the walls were covered with rattlesnake hides hanging from the ceiling. He had an old gas tank, and it had a glass jug up on the top of it, and you had to use a handle and pump the gas up into that gas thing if you wanted a gallon of gas or 5 gallons of gas. You pumped it up there and then you put the hose in your car, and I guess it just ran it there. We come on into where we lived on Flagler. The little schoolhouse is still there, where it's a pink one. The church across the road was the first schoolhouse, and they moved it over there when they started to build the pink schoolhouse. And that became the Southern Methodist Church. That's where I went to school, Sunday school and church with my mother. And Miss Merritt was the superintendent of the little children's Sunday school. And while I was in school in Salerno, they started a marching band in Stuart. And I joined the band, and Miss Merritt played the French horn and a county band, I guess, or a city band. She let me play her French horn. And I learned to play it. She took her son and me to band practice at night. We had band practice every day because we were a marching band. We went to the Super Bowl. We was in the Super Bowl parade in Miami in 1939.
The Orange Bowl. The Orange Bowl, not the Super Bowl. The Orange Bowl.
The orange, what did I say?
Super Bowl.
It was the Orange Bowl. I'm sorry. It's all right. I was in the parade. Minnie Louise Wells was in it with me. She was in the class with me.
It don't matter.
When we went to Miami for that, we stayed in a hotel. That was the first time I saw escalator stairs. And they were probably as long as this table or maybe, and they all rolled. Well, we had a lot of fun running down that up one and up and down one until they stopped us. So we were 11 and 12 years old, so we also got to go to all the football games, and we performed with them. Turned out to be a pretty good band, I think. Mr. Bernard Coker, I don't know if any of you remember him. He was our band director in the 7th grade. Well, I was in the 7th grade.
I know it makes hardware.
Yeah.
Right. Until he passed away, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, this is all on recall, so we'll have to. Thank you. We stayed on our side of the railroad track pretty much, so I didn't know much of what was going on down around the Red Dog or the Coconut, which is a place of I didn't know until I grew up a lot of things that happened down there. We had a lot of parties from Sunday school and church, and we made ice cream.
Thank you.
We had a lot of things to eat, like fruits. We had
Fish.
guavas. We had guavas and mangoes and different kinds of mangoes, oranges and grapefruit, cherries, grapes once in a while, huckleberries. we'd go out in the woods and hunt huckleberries, and we thought we were way off from home. Come to find out, we was probably a couple blocks away in the woods. We had a tomato packing house that was on the property of the railroad track. On the property on the east side, downtown. And we who were left at home from the war worked in the packing house. We worked on a tomato belt. It was road, both sides had women working all the way down the belt. They'd put the tomatoes in the water and they'd come up on the belt, and we'd pick off the bad ones and throw them underneath somewhere. Miss Gunnarsson would send her fish house truck out and take people out to the fields after they had picked all the good tomatoes, and we flew out and picked the rest. Mom and I canned tomatoes. We also made a lot of ketchup for Miss Gunnarsson on halves. The different families would get on the truck and we'd all go out there. Then on Saturday, the truck would go around town and sit there, and everybody wanted to go to Stuart. We'd get on the fish house truck and go to Stuart. And all of us kids would go to the movies while Mama was shopping. 12 o'clock, we had to get on that truck to go back home. Downtown, Mr. Earl had an old store,
She's gonna be talking.
and he had small barrels of food. The beans, beans and sugar and rice. Thank you. They were in these barrels, and with a scoop, you'd scoop them up in a bag and get what you wanted to take home and cook, because we didn't have a refrigerator at the time. We had an ice box. And the iceman would come around every few days and sell you a little piece of ice. You didn't have extra food either, like we have today. You know, people have a pantry today. We just had what we were gonna eat that day. Anyway, he was the man that took the mail down to the depot. And he would go to the post office with a little cart he pushed, and he'd push it down there, and they'd throw the mail off the train. It would stop there. And they also put fish on the train when they stopped. They were in barrels and ice. The man on the train would give him mail that we were going to get, so he'd bring it back to the post office. In the afternoon, there was a post out by a ditch on the other side of the railroad track, and it had a hanger, and he'd hang a bag of mail on that, and the train would come by in the afternoon, and it would put out some kind of a arm that would grab that bag of mail, and someone on the train would throw out a bag of mail into the ditch there. Mr. Earl would get that, take it to the post office. We had a lot of fishermen in Salerno. Mr. Tolley had 4, Mr. Engelbretson, he had 4 charter boats. He ran one, and Tolley ran one, Edward ran one, and Ted Preston ran the other one. for Mr. Tolley. Then the rest of them were commercial fishermen. And some of them are sitting beside me. Back then, though, we had net racks. Nets were cut cotton, and they tore up, I think, easier than the nets that these boys fished. But the net racks were built up from the shore down over the water, and there was 2 racks for each one, and a place to walk on each side. And they had to pull those nets up on that rack no matter what time they came in the evening, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, they had to pull them back on the boat. Then they come out with, was it
Nylon.
Nylon and then monofilament.
what?
Nylon and then
The
monofilament.
nylon nets, and then they came out with the monofilament, and that's what they fishing today, I believe.
Yeah.
What fishermen are fishing. I believe most of the fishermen that are fishing now are the ones that put us out of business. I do.
Most of them aren't born.
I wasn't one of them.
Thank
I wasn't one.
Not you.
I know.
Our old depot was, I think Mr. and Miss Terry bought that, or they gave it to him or something, because he worked on the railroad with 3 black men. They lived in section houses right across the railroad from the depot. And it was right across from the fire department, pretty much. And they moved that depot down on Front Street to the south and closed it in and made their home there. And they moved the Terry home out on Grouper Street.
The Mackenzies live there. The Mackenzies live there. The Mackenzies live there in the section house.
Mackenzie's, yes.
Are you done?
I'm trying to think. There's something I would.
You told them everything about being a guard for the war?
Oh, during the war, they built a tower that was a couple stories high. And they sent us to a school to learn to recognize airplanes. We were awful close to that war. We had ships hit right off our coast. And one burnt down off of Hope Sound for days and days. We also had a torpedo hit the reef out there, and that kind of shook everybody up. My uncle was a shark fisherman, and he fished way offshore. And one of the German boats was on fire out there, and one of the boys, the German soldiers got burnt real bad. So he picked him up and brought him into the fish house, and they took him into the hospital. I don't know what they did with him after that. Anyway, we had a big army camp down south of Hope Sound. We had a lot of soldiers and sailors, and also Wickham Field was activated, so we had sailors there. And that base was down at Jonathan Dickinson Park. And the trees were so pretty and green that you couldn't see that camp at all from highway. If you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't have seen it. We had a lot of soldiers and sailors, and in school, in home ec, our teacher had us make cookies, and she says, we're gonna put your name in the box and send them overseas. I did, but mine went to Camp Murphy. First thing I knew, there was a soldier come up to see me, I guess, to tell me thank you, and see what a kid I was. And then I got on the train to go to Georgia one summer. I got to Jacksonville, and they bumped me off and filled it up with service people. I was on a troop train. And I guess I stood there and cried for a while. There was nobody I could call, nobody had phones. And I was 14 years old, so one of the service ladies, she helped me. She come and asked me what was wrong. I told her I was going just about 50 miles on past Jacksonville. So she asked the conductor if I could get on a sleeper to go that far. And he said yes, otherwise I'd probably still be in Jacksonville. I couldn't call Mama, I couldn't call anybody. I think I'm gonna wind this up. I'm getting nervous. But I had a good life.
You ain't done with it yet.
No, I'm not.
Did you do anything with the shark house?
No.
Yeah.
We did have a shark house. Mrs. Varlador worked down there, and a colored man, and they skinned those sharks and cut them up and took the livers out and fins off and hung them out in the sunshine for them to dry. Then they'd ship them over to Japan or China somewhere. And that place smells so bad. Didn't it, John?
Yeah.
When the wind blew the right way.
I have a hard time remembering what I did last week. Here she's going back, yeah, I
96
can't,
years.
96 years. It's
It's
amazing. And that verbal history is what we need to preserve, because we're losing too many of our old-time residents.
Old people.
Old-time residents.
It's the way it works, ain't it? Ain't that normal?
It is, but they're a resource that we in the museum appreciate, and I know a lot of you appreciate, but, it hurts us to see some of our elder statespeople, go on. Do appreciate your insight and everything. Now, having heard a little bit about what Winnie went through, anybody want to go back to the good old days? Where you got to work the conveyor belt to get the rotten tomatoes off. And, I'm kind of soft. I kind of like.
We didn't have a washing machine for a long time.
Nice
Washed
box.
on rub board,
Yep.
and then you put them in the rinse water and run them, and put them in another rinse water, and then you hang them up or starch them. Back then you had to starch and iron. And the irons were those old irons that you put on the stove to heat.
Yeah, that's the good old days that we don't want to see any more of.
You'll see that kind in the museum.
Right.
No ice cream in the freezer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Could you introduce us to the panel, please?
Probably couldn't. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, because I'd be pointing to one person and naming another. Yeah. Gentlemen, let me ask you to introduce yourself to the crowd, and just sort of open up to general conversations, whatever you have to share, we're interested in hearing.
But you have to tell us who you are, we're not eeny, meeny, miny, mouse.
I'm Ronnie Houck. I'm a third generation commercial fisherman here. I was born here in Stuart. My grandfather was a commercial fisherman. My grandfather come from up north, my other grandfather, and come here and started commercial fishing. It's been a great way of life. Port Salerno, I don't remember how many red lights it was in Port Salerno. One red light.
One.
I didn't remember that one.
It blinked first, it was a blinker,
I was gonna say, what a red light.
caution light,
Yeah,
Like a flasher.
but yeah, where was it at?
right downtown Salerno.
Oh, okay, all right. But the roads we had very few hard roads. Most of the roads were bumpy and rough on the car. We didn't have any air conditioning. We used to wait till probably 10 o'clock at night to go to sleep because it was so hot in the summertime. The stores, we had one grocery store, and that was Buc-ee's grocery store. It was beside the Coconut Bar, or the Red Dog Saloon, or what you call it, Wendy? That was before
We call
my
it the
time.
Red Dog.
Red Dog Saloon. But anyway, that was the only, well, there was P.O. Smith, that was another grocery
And
store, right?
Leachman,
Where?
Leachman's,
Leachman? I don't remember Leachman.
they were catty corner.
Oh, okay, all right. And there was Herb and Maryland's, or Maryland and Herb's crab plant. They picked crabs and they sold the crabs. They canned them and sold them all over the store and to the restaurants. Let's see, what else was going on then? There was a gas station. Remember Butch's? Warden, yeah, Warden, yeah.
Butch and Mike.
Yeah, and then there was Larson with the golf station, and mosquitoes were terrible. I can remember one time we were up the river and we were fishing. We were up by Betsy Creek Bar, and we had kerosene lanterns we used to put the net out, to mark the net, and we were up there and it was a quiet night and the mosquitoes were terrible. I mean, they were terrible. And my job was to watch the net go out while my dad rode the net out. And the mosquitoes were eating me up there. And I was swatting them. He turns around, he stops rowing, and he says, "Boy, don't you kill another mosquito." And I hope this doesn't offend anyone here. He says, "That's the only," I said, "They're eating me up." He says, "That's the only thing gonna stop them damn Yankees from coming down." I said, "Oh, Lord." So I went back and I started brushing them off, and that was one rough night. But it was a tough place to live, but it was a good place to live. When I'd walk down to the store, or wherever, there was always a mango or avocado, or like Winnie said, guavas all over the place, and a lot of citrus, and now you don't see that anymore. And the fishing was phenomenal. I can remember in the pocket, I could throw a cast net and it would fill up with juvenile fish. You had to be really careful, because if you got too small of a mash, the net would fill up and it'd take you 15, 20 minutes to get it cleared up, so you had to be really careful. One day, my dad had a fish company that went across the pocket about 300 yards, and the bathroom, they had a room there, and there was a bathroom, and it was a little box with a hole cut in it, and that was the bathroom back then. I went into the bathroom and I was looking down at the hole, and I seen about a 15-pound snook swim by. So my dad always had a live bait well, and I said, "Man, I'm gonna grab my hand line and I'm gonna get one of them pogies out of that bait well, and I'm gonna catch that snook." And sure enough, I threw it right down in the toilet, and he come right up and he just inhaled that bait. But I only had 15-pound test line, and he just kept right on going. So I can honestly say I have a snook going in the toilet. I'm gonna turn the mic over to somebody else. Anybody want to make a comment?
My name's Peter Grien. I grew up on Maddie Pocket, about 3 doors north of Pirates Cove Marina there. My dad, Henry Grien, came down to Salerno in 1949. He bought the Coconut Bar, King Neptune's, that strip center there, which we still own. So I spent a lot of time in my youth in the Coconut Bar. He would go in there after work. It was a thing where all the workers would get off construction jobs or fishing or working down at the fish house, was right behind it. They go in the Coconut Bar and drink. I remember a lot of things. There wasn't much. I remember Jack Saunderson, he had the Gulf Station downtown Salerno, and he was also the head, they had a volunteer fire department right next door, and they were mostly all old military Jeeps and trucks they converted to make fire trucks in, and he was the head of the fire department there. And if they had a fire, he'd close up the Gulf gas station, run over the fire, ring the bell, the siren, and everyone would come jump on the trucks. When he was talking about the tomato packing plant, which was right across the street from the Coconut Bar there, I don't remember, it was before my time, but my dad always told me about it. One night, it was a windy night, it caught fire. It was a big wooden building. And my dad there, right next to the Coconut Bar, there was a Salerno Hotel, a small little building there called the Salerno Hotel. Well, the flames, sparks flew over, caught the hotel on fire, that burned down. Fire department, they came, they had a hose, they went down to where, the little creek there, right where, I can't think of, what's that little restaurant? It used to be Pandora's.
Mangia?
And anyway, they took the hose, threw it in the creek, which was muddy bottom, of course, you know, you sink up to your waist there. Threw it in the creek, started pumping full of mud. So there was no water coming out of any of the hoses, so it burned down, and then after that, that was it. But I didn't do much fishing, but when I was small, young, me and Ronnie, I hung out down at his dad's fish house there. And it was an old wooden structure, like he said, it went out over the water. And we had a little flatty, and we go fish the pocket there, and mainly looking for croakers. I remember 25 cents a pound. That was probably about the most expensive fish you could catch in the pocket there. Mullet would be 5 cents if they would take them. Snappers, maybe 10 cents. So that was very interesting doing that. I remember the old fish house, they would, the ice truck would come around. They had no ice machines back then. The ice truck would back up there. They had these 300-pound blocks of ice, and they would have these big ice tongs, and they would drag them across the wood floor. And when they needed ice, they would take a hatchet or an axe, and they'd break it up. They had this machine. It was belt-driven, electric motor, but it had teeth in it, and they throw the chunks in the top. It made a heck of a racket there. And the ice would come out, and they would put it in the fish boxes. But yeah, it's grown up a lot since then. I'll let Bruce tell you a little bit.
We had
Hello
a nice
tonight.
house before then. There was a nice house in Stuart.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then-
yeah,
and then
right
blocks
down
of
the street
ice,
there.
but
That was too far away.
I'm Bruce Stiller, and I'm part of the history of Port Salerno. And I agree with everything that's been said here so far. Fishing used to be a lot of work. And it didn't make me love it less, because I loved it a lot. My family homesteaded 80 acres from A1A to the Manatee Pocket. That's where I grew up. And those canals you see in there, we dug those to put our boats in for the hurricanes when they would come. All we had was the front of the Manatee Pocket to protect us. There's a lot of stories been told here tonight. I don't want to step on anybody with my stories, but Port Salerno was off limits for me. I was only allowed in Stillerville, which was the land between Golden Gate and Port Salerno. That
was our area to roam. That's where I grew up. And all of the stories about cotton nets and linen nets, I did all of that when I was a kid. And you had to pull those nets out, and you had to dry them or they would rot. And you had to lime them
Yeah.
to get the slime from the fish out of them to keep them from rotting. They were just like cloth, your linen and your cotton cloth. It was a lot of work, a lot of worky. All of the, bring you up to date just a little bit, a step forward, if you will. My father traded his property for the Corinthian Club today, as you know it, by the Rocky Point, Horseshoe Point Bridge. And we had a fish facility there. And there was a lot of production going on. It increased. And the families were financially supported by that. And I have young guys walk up to me nowadays and say to me, I used to work for you when you ran a fish house. And
So did I.
we used to take the entrails, the guts, out of every fish that we caught.
Yep.
Because of the spoilage. And we took the you talk about the train going by, we used to take the fish and put them in barrels and ice the barrels and put a lid on it and put them on the train for New York. Hello? That's a long time ago. And I'm testifying here today that my family, the book written about my family right here, by my grandmother and by my uncle. How we came down here on a covered wagon, stopped in Merritt Island, homesteaded 80 acres there. My grandmother was the entrepreneur girl. She did the business for the family and came down here because where fresh water goes into salt water, it's a fish haven if it's not polluted, just like the Mississippi River used to be. Well, we had that same thing here with the St. Lucie, the Lake Okeechobee, the fresh water coming out of there was not polluted. And it made a fish haven for St. Lucie Inlet. And that's why my family came to Port Salerno. My grandmother had something to do with a mail. I'm not sure whether she was the postmaster, but anybody that was somebody lived on Flounder because they had a house on Flounder.
Not next to ours.
Right next, okay. That was the first house they owned here. And my grandfather, this is the way my father told me, my grandfather was spending too much time at the coconut. And my grandmother sent him down, and they bought the homesteading rights for that land for $263. And my uncle and my dad would row my grandfather out in the river, and he would fish all night, and they would row back in the next morning, and they would catch the bus at Sanskrit Park to go to school. Okay? And there's a lot more history in my family than just me. My grandmother, on the Arnold family side, there's an island out there named after their family. They had a houseboat tied up to it.
Red Arnold.
Arnold's Island.
Yeah.
And so the history just doesn't stop here. And all of this landed in Port Salerno. It doesn't seem like Port Salerno is big enough to handle all that, but it has been. And I'm going to leave with this, what I've always told myself. No matter how much concrete they pour up on top of it, it's still my home. Hallelujah. Woo.
I'm John Crane, and yeah, I grew up here. I was born here and everything, and my father was born in Fort Pierce. My mother She was born in a little place called Lulu, but she moved to Indiantown it was in the 30s. And my father, they had a farm in Fort Pierce. And from what I understand, one of the largest farms in the area. They were very prosperous, did very well. And then my grandfather in his 30s died of a brain aneurysm. And my grandmother lost the farm and all that, and they came down, and they were one of the first people to live on the sand spread. And so they lived there. It was my grandmother, 2 sons and 2 daughters. They grew up fishing. My father went into the service, learned to become an electrician, came out in the 50s and started a family business in Stuart, air conditioning and electric, Kraus and Crane. And that was started in the 50s after he got out of service. However, he never could get out of the fishing. My uncle stayed in it. He never got out of it. And at one time, Bruce's family, I had my Uncle James, my Uncle Bobby, and my grandfather. All had fishes right in here, in the pocket area.
Fish houses, yeah.
They were all that's what they did. And my father, he would work at night or during the day up at the shop. He had a little boat, and we'd go out and run a couple 100 yards of net out and catch a few fish and come in, and that's how I kind of got into it. And then I fished with my uncle, which never got out of it. And it was just a wonderful life. I couldn't imagine having a better life. I grew up loving to fish and dive. Back in those days, the water was really clear, fish everywhere. Probably 10 years old, had my first boat that had an engine and could run around a little bit and get out and go. And we used to go out and get around the channel markers and jump over with a spear gun, and we could shoot sheephead all over the place.
Yeah.
You'd see a whole school of sheephead and just start shooting sheephead and bringing them in, and it was just one, and nobody out there. If you broke down, you had to worry about somebody finding you. Because it's not like today. If you break down now, you got to get out of the way, you get run over. Back then, you could literally go all day and not see somebody.
Yeah, sure did.
It'd just be out there, and it's just you. So you had to be prepared. It was a lot of fun, but you had to be prepared. And I don't know, and then we come all the way up to, most of us went to school together. We ended up in Martin County, and I remember going up and watching Bruce play football. He was my hero for a while. I know he doesn't look it, but he's older than me, quite a bit. quite a bit too. So anyway, and I grew up, we used to, I guess call it tag team. My Uncle Bobby and his father, we'd all get together and go out beach seining.
Yeah.
Have do a double, pull a double. And a beach seine, you go up there, you throw the net out on the beach. This is out in the ocean on the beach, and then a half moon in it, 1,000 yards of net or whatever, pull it down. It was a blast. You're just in the water all day, fishing, swimming, diving. It was work, but it was fun. And we all knew each other. We all got along. We played together, and just a wonderful time. And it's just hard to believe what it is now, and how they've destroyed the water quality, and it's hard to look back on all that. And her husband taught me how to play baseball, or pitch a little bit. Out there, he was always out at the ballpark.
Hot shots.
Playing, yeah, I played baseball, football, all that. And her husband helped coach. And
Your dad was my coach.
yeah, my father coached Elaine. She played softball with my sisters. So it's like one big family. We all knew each other. So other than that, I'll pass it on to somebody.
I'm David Lowe. My parents moved to Port Salerno in late 1954 and started what was then David Lowe's Boatyard on the east side of the Manatee Pocket. It's now Hinckley. Mom taught school at Port Salerno Elementary.
She was my first grade teacher.
And I grew up we literally lived at the Boatyard. I grew up there when Mom and Dad started, like I said, they moved down late 1954. The old timers told them that the mosquitoes would carry them off. And pretty close, that's pretty accurate, as Ronnie was saying earlier. They were bad. I mean, on all of Rocky Point at that point, there were commercial fishermen next door to us, the Ericksons. There was a hermit that lived way over on Williams Way, if you know where that is, if you're familiar with Rocky Point. That was it for all of Rocky Point, which now has probably a couple of thousand or more people living there. But yeah, I grew up in Port Salerno. It was wonderful. I knew everybody sitting at this table. John sold himself short a little bit down there. John was the starting quarterback for Martin County High and was starting quarterback for the Auburn Tigers. Wow. A few years ago, John.
Yeah, it was yesterday. Sure.
Bruce was my cousin, who was also David Lowe. That created some confusion and still does. He played with you, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. And Peter, remember your family very well. And Ronnie and I were in first grade together, and I've known each other all this time, of course. But what am I forgetting, guys? But anyway, lots of changes, obviously. I remember pretty much everything that everybody has talked about. What was the name of the grocery store that was cornered to Smith's?
Leachman's. Big old fat guy.
I had completely forgotten about that. And Jack Saunderson got mentioned earlier. Was also, if I recall correctly, wasn't he the county commissioner?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You used to have fish fries.
But before he got in charge of the fire
He had dinners down
department,
there.
my mom used to get the phone calls and she'd run down there and push the siren.
Yeah. If you're down in Port Salerno, if you know where District Table Restaurant is, which used to be Salerno National Bank, Florida National Bank, the vault is still in there, by the way. The vault door is still in there. But anyway, that building that's now, what is it now? Like a fish and bait and tackle shop or something? That was the Gulf Station.
Stuart Angler.
Yep.
With a
And
volunteer
in the
fire
district,
department.
there was a barber shop and a beauty shop there.
That's right.
Remember Buzz's beauty shop?
Yeah, north of District Table.
Yep,
Yeah, Buzz the barber.
yep.
He went out fishing one day and
Never came back.
never came back.
Anyway.
I got one little thing I wanted to throw in there. Yeah, when he was talking about some of that, there was one time, and I don't know how it affected all these people, but for us and our family, one of the biggest highlights of growing up, I don't even remember what grade I was in, but we used to go to elementary school right at Salerno Elementary. We'd get out of school, we'd walk, get to the fish house as fast as we could. My grandfather would give us, I want to say it was a dime or a quarter for one of them steel baskets. Get it, fill it full of bluefish or mackerel, and he'd give you something for every basket you did. And that's something we did every day. And we just worked and did all that. But one year, all of a sudden it came in and there's a film crew. And they actually made a motion picture in Salerno, and it was in the 60s.
Gentle Ben.
Gentle Giant, Gentle Ben.
Gentle Giant,
And it was really cool. And they set up right across the road from my grandfather's fish house. So we got to go to the fish house and we could watch stuff. And the little boy, I can see his face and I can't remember his name.
Clint Howard.
my younger brother Sam, got in a fight with him. we had a pet raccoon, and he was walking around with a pet, my brother was walking around with a pet raccoon, and this guy come over and they started getting into it. But anyway, they got in a fight, so he got threw off the set. And but almost literally every fisherman in Salerno was in that movie.
Yeah.
And it was on the big screen. It was pretty cool.
I'll add a little to that. I have strong memory of that. Ivan Tours, he did the flipper thing, and they came to town, and they had us set up down on Seaward, from the post office down on Seaward. They had these big generators, because they had used a lot of light filming then, and they had all these cables strung all up and down the roads, laying on the ground. I remember that. But I had a friend from Jensen, Michael Langberg, which was a well-known family up in Jensen. They owned Riverside Trailer Park. Anyway, he was down, and he was somewhat affluent family, and they had a couple walkie-talkies. He brought 2 walkie-talkies. So I had one, and Michael had one walkie-talkie. So we're walking around, the set, not on the set, but up and down the street, and with the walkie-talkies, and a couple deputies come over to us. And they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, no, we just have these walkie-talkies. We're talking." And they said, "Well, you're interfering with the communications of the set, so put them away." That's my recollection of General Ben.
You remember Scratch Glennon? You remember him?
Who?
Scratch Glennon?
Walter Glennon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just Michael?
He was an old ragged looking.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say something about.
And they asked him to be in the movie, so he went home and shaved
Shaved.
and cleaned up and looked back, and they said, "We don't want you anymore."
We don't need you anymore. He was quite upset. How do you turn this thing on? Anybody know?
It's on, I get it.
Okay. But, old Walter, he was upset about that. And that was gonna be the highlight of his life.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always everybody happy and jolly around there either. There was
No.
sometimes it got a little carried away down at Coconut Bar. All the fishermen get to fight, and then
Oh, I had a cousin
the
killed.
bike gangs come in there, and the
Yep,
fishermen
Larry.
fight with them.
Yeah, Larry, he was shot dead in there.
Larry
I had a cousin that went to Vietnam.
Yep.
He went to Vietnam and got a Purple Heart. He was wounded in Vietnam. And he came home. Everybody else has got a coconut story, I think. But anyway, he got in a fight with somebody, and some guy pulled a gun out and shot him right in the heart and killed him. And that's my only story, the coconut. I've never had a beer in there, so I don't know nothing else about it.
They were talking about mosquitoes being bad. You don't know what mosquitoes were. When I grew up, Daddy had made us a mosquito brush that you had to brush them off of you to keep them from beating you up.
I believe it.
And at night, before we'd go to bed, they were so bad, he'd make a smudge in a bucket and go through the house and smoke them out. They'd go to the windows, then he'd come along with a spray can and he'd kill them. And that's the only way we could sleep back then. And there's another story I was gonna tell about, it was 2 men bought a boat together down there. And they had some problems, and each one of them wanted the boat.
This is the biggest problem.
So what they did, they cut that boat in half. They got the stern.
That was Roger Vail. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I don't remember.
You remember the guy that was the artist? What was his name, Peter? Something Fisher or Lee Frazier?
Lee Frazier.
Lee Frazier. It was him and Roger. I got lots of stories I can tell you about Salerno, but most of them I can't repeat. I was born in I was born in Stuart Hospital when there was 12 rooms. Back in 1948, I can remember when there was 1 red light in Martin County. We grew up there, and us kids run our town. Salerno was our town. And we had a deputy, Jack Curry, that allowed it to be our town. He got us all together, and he called me Freckles, because I was blessed with freckles when I was a kid. But he said, "Freckles, you better get your gang together," because I hung with all the boys, because Daddy was a ball coach. Get your gang together and tell them if you get in trouble, if I get a call, you got 30 minutes to get home in bed so your mom can say you're home. And that's the way we grew up. We did as we pleased. We ran that town. But it was a blast growing up there. But there was one red light in Stuart. It was a US one in Colorado at the Texaco truck stop. Do you remember that, Gloria?
Yeah, the Dairy Queen.
Yep. Then we finally got a blinking light in Salerno, and we thought we were living high. We had a blinking light. But watching the changes go from volunteer fire department, everybody in town being involved, so paid firefighters, the schools changed so much, just everything. I remember when they paved the streets because the county had a road grader that used to park at our house, and he would grade all the dirt roads ever in Watson.
Yeah,
And he-
Mr. Bobson.
But he would park on our street, and they would come across the railroad and go as fast as they could go and hit that dirt and make it maybe a half a block before they got stuck.
Get stuck.
And then on the weekend, that would go on all weekend. Monday, he'd come back and have 8 or 10 cars that he had to pull out. But growing up was a real hoot in Salerno. And working in the fish house was my dream when I was a kid. I begged to go to work there, and I still work there. Still run a dock. I worked for John's family for 29 years. 29 years. We had a 6 million pound a year order at Simonson's restaurant. We never failed to fill the order. 6 million pounds of Spanish mackerel. But fishing's still good, but it's not good like it was before they took our nets. They ruined us. They ruined us.
There wasn't anything easy on the
No
And
fish.
destroy-
one has
destroy the
mentioned the shark factory.
I don't remember the shark.
Well, I asked her if she knew it, that's before us.
Some of
Was
our
that
That's
family.
before-
before your time?
I asked her and she didn't work
Well, that
there.
was in my time.
Yeah. Did you
At
spell it?
the end of the street past Pirates Cove.
My father had an opportunity to buy that point
I
after it
went
was
to
over.
school with 2 boys.
I
Their
went-
dad was the supervisor there. And his last name was Springer.
Well, my Uncle Jabbo worked there, and my Uncle Owen worked there, but I don't remember anything
Uncle
about it.
Owen fished.
It was
They had
mainly
4
the
boats
oil.
there that fished.
Yeah,
the
they
liver-
would
liver
derive the oil, yeah.
And then whenever the synthetic oil came out, they put them out of business.
Right.
But my father used to fish for the shark.
Oh, okay. Because we have some pictures over here on a table of the shark picture of some of the people. They would skin the sharks and hang the skins out to dry and sold them to leather companies. And we have a picture of Winnie repairing a net. A great picture in color. So when you all get up, please look at those pictures. There's some
Well,
great
a lot of
shots.
that
Yeah, we did.
hanging in there. So when the leads and corks over, I built.
I knew we had to get a question out.
I just remember the fish nets, when the fishermen would supply so many fish for the Men's Garden Club, and they'd have a huge crowd here. Did you give fish for that? Can you remember?
Organized fishermen in Florida. We had a
Well, Winnie did
chapter
that.
here,
Okay.
and we would it was a big campaign on for the Lake Okeechobee pollution that we were getting here. And we held hands with the recreational fishermen, with the garden club and the Audubon Society, and we gave them fish for their fish fries. But we didn't do 2 hoots with the deal with the pollution problem. But we tried.
Thank you for trying. and thank
We
you for
tried.
the fish.
We gave fish to the schools, to the fire department, to anybody that needed fish.
Yeah.
That was the way we raised money.
Yeah.
Not only did we give them to them, we cleaned them.
I was just gonna say, my great uncle Ben Mulford founded Salerno, and we have a lot of history in Salerno.
There's a lot of folks still around.
Your daddy took me to school every morning on the school bus.
To George? Yeah.
Anyone call any guys out on lies, anything they've exaggerated on? How about any other questions?
Is anyone still working out in the water, or is everybody retired?
There's a lot
I'm
of
working in the water still.
I mean, out of the group.
Out of the group? Oh, in the,
Well, you're in the group.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm still working.
He's
I'm
fishing.
still working, but they got me working with a fish hook and a piece of line. That's what I'm working with now, compared to what I used to work with. We used to have spotter pilots here. Matter of fact, I can tell a little story about Bruce and I, let me see the microphone, so I don't know if they can all hear me. But we were off Vero Beach, and we had spotter pilots. Bruce had his spotter pilot. I don't want to offend you or anything.
No, it's okay.
Anyway, the spotter pilot called me on the radio, and he says, because it's quite competitive back then. He says, Ronnie,
Yeah.
it was very competitive. He says, Ronnie, I got 2 bunches of fish north of you. He says, but the only problem is Bruce Stiller's in between you and the fish. I said, that's not a good situation. I said, let me think about this a minute. I said, if I move any, he's gonna know something's up. So I said, Lord, I got an idea. I said, I'm gonna call him and see if he's got a loaf of bread. Because I know I can outrun him if I can get over there where he's at. So sure enough, I call him and he says, I said, you got a loaf of bread, Bruce? And Bruce said, yeah, I've got a loaf of bread. Generous, nice as he could be. I said, I'm gonna come up that way and get that loaf of bread from you, knowing I could outrun him because the fish were north of him. And once I got to him, I was gonna meet him. And
He did.
let's finish the rest of it here. Anyway, I got up to him and I had a 50-foot boat and I just poured the power to it, threw a big wake on him, and I says, come on. But what the problem was is there was a big bunch of fish and there was a little bunch of fish. And I said, Lloyd, the spotter pilot, I says, you make sure you put me around the big bunch of fish. And he did. He got me up here, I outrun Bruce, and Bruce got the little bunch of fish. But what happened to me is the sharks come down and eat my net up, destroyed it, and he got the fish, and I got the scraps. And the moral of this story is, when you pull a shenanigan, there's consequences.
I never thought he'd tell that. He had a happy ending for me. That's the truth. It's okay.
There's the stand, put it in the stand there.
Thinking back, the earliest fish fries was Port Salerno Volunteer Fire Department. They would cook them behind there. There was a little park there, it's still there, Chandler Park, I think. I'm not sure what the name of that park is, but anyway, they would, as a fundraiser for a fire department, they would cook up the mackerel, and that's my earliest recollection of Port Salerno seafood, fish fries.
I want to say that I'm retired and I have had all of my childhood dreams come true. Everything in my mind that I wanted to do as a young boy and a young man came true for me. And I am so happy that I don't have to work anymore. Thank you guys for being there with us.
Yeah, part of your question earlier, is there still someone fishing?
No, I just meant out of the group.
Well, out of the group, Elaine runs the docks down there at Port Salerno, right?
I run one of them.
One of them, okay.
Yep.
So there may
We
not
still
be-
have fishermen,
They're still out there.
just different technique.
Well, back then, we had large nets. We had a quota. There was I think a 2 million pound quota is what we had to catch. And they shut us off as soon as we caught that quota. And when they put it on the ballot, I don't think people realized that we were on a quota. These are migratory fish, and they come down here, and we catch what the fish can sustain and maintain themselves, and then they shut us off as soon as we catch that quota. So they knocked us down to cast nets, and that's 500 square feet, and that's not very big. And the guys have got good enough where they can make a living now with it, and it's been a struggle. And the guys with the rod and reels are using live bait, and they're making a living with that now. But it was a lot easier, as far as I'm concerned, with a gill net.
Yeah.
And catching them and getting the quota off of getting it filled. Then the fish weren't bothered anymore. I think for the fish to be healthy, I think that if you took some of those boats off and let the fish alone for a while, and make it healthier stock of fish. But it's changed, and they put, well, there was about 15 or 20 of us with the big boats, and of course, there's a lot of small gill net fishermen around the river. But they put a lot more boats into it. Probably now, there's probably 100 boats in the cast net fishery. So instead of a few boats making a lot of money, I guess you could say, they split it up among a bunch of people. So a lot of the people in Port Salerno now are making a living with a rod and reel and a cast net. But it's tough too. It's hard. Bruce, you did cast net, and it's when you pull a net in 30 feet of water, it's 18, 20 pounds all day long. It wears on you.
And one shark messes you up.
Yeah. And we also had another shark fishery before that. We used to catch a lot of sharks with nets, and then they banned that.
Human consumption, they do.
Yeah, and they showed where we were thinning these sharks and throwing the carcass overboard, but it was really out of a different country where that picture come from.
Yeah.
And it made us look like the bad guys, but we sold every shark that we caught, the meat and the fins, never threw any back. I was getting 60 cents a pound for the sharks, for the carcass, and the fins we were selling across, well, we sell them down in Miami, and they ship them over, I think, to Japan, and we did good. But now, since they banned the sharks have multiplied.
They take
And
it out.
the way I see it is like a bunch of timber wolves. And if you protect the timber wolves and you let the people hunt the deer, and the timber wolves hunt the deer, you're not going to have any more deer. So you've got to manage everything, and the people we got working for us are not managing it right. You can't take from one and not the other one. But there's a lot of things that.
Same thing with the Jewfish.
Same thing with the Jewfish, same thing. I'm going to turn this over to somebody else. Who would like to have it? Peter?
You all talked out?
Yeah.
Unless they want to ask some questions.
First and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. You know, this was what sounded like a good idea, and we're starting to say, okay, who are we going to call? And Ronnie reached out to.
Today.
They just all came together. All I did was open the door.
He called you today.
I couldn't find
But
it.
that's part of what I think Port Salerno was always about. You say, hey, we need something, we come together and we do it. And that's sort of what the museum's about. We need something, we come together, we do it. Speaking of doing it, I want to get the raffle drawn over there. Help?
I want to say something else before we leave.
Hmm?
I said I want to say something else before we leave.
Absolutely.
We've got a heck of a fight going on right now, trying to keep Port Salerno.
Keep the mic.
We have developers down there that want to take everything that is Port Salerno and put condos, this and this and this. We formed an organization called SOS, and we're here to fight to the bitter end, to the end.
I try not to get too involved in politics, but we all are facing it. You know, whether it's Port Salerno and the development they want to do down there, whether it's the growth within the city of Stuart, Jensen Beach, you know, all of Martin County. And if you've got an opinion as to what should or shouldn't be done, I encourage you to express it to your city commissioners, county commissioners. You know, make your opinion known. I don't know, can't say it'll do any good, but it's up to the residents to keep the right people in office to protect what we have. And I know I moved up here 40 years ago, so I'm an interloper. But yeah, we got to protect what we have, whether it be the water, the fish, the waterfront, the whole community, and our history. Stuart Heritage Museum. Coming up this November, we anticipate being on the ballot for the resolution authorizing the city commissioners to lease that building to us on a long-term lease. You will hear more about this going forward. We need all the support we can get, because right now we are in the old feed store at the gracious gift of the city commissioners. But that doesn't mean next year we'll be there. We want to get a 10-year lease to ensure that we can continue to represent the history of our community. Now, the raffle includes items from Seacoast Bank, it includes wine, includes chocolate, you know, crackers, cookies, and you did not have to be present to win. So, if I can get this young lady with an honest face.
Shy she is.
Oh, it's mine. Helen.
Oh, Helen. Where's Helen?
Helen.
Oh, Helen. Holy Helen?
Holy
Do you want to get it on your way out, or do you want me to bring it?
Y'all are so quiet and peaceful and I ought to keep you. That's what I'll keep you. You'll be here next month. Yeah.
Not so quiet there.
Okay. Any questions on any subject that I can sort of fumble through? Next month, Tony Anderson will be our speaker. I presume he's talking about schools and school board and education. I think that's what he knows most about. It will be on February, the second Tuesday in February, which is the 13th, I think.
He's another one that can tell you about going on Port Salerno.
Absolutely. We thought about wrestling him in here tonight, but no, we need him for next month.
Yeah, he's one of 8 or 10 children, and everyone works on the fish house. Everyone.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for your support to the museum. Keep in mind, we are open 7 days a week. Come by and visit.